Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly, joined by Justin Godsey. This is the Real Sports Talk and Nation Sports Blog presents the 30 Clubs, 30 Previews MLB special. And Justin, today we are on to the most popular, most loved, and most hated team in the MLB, and that is the New York Yankees, a team that last year pretty much got embarrassed by the Detroit Tigers in the playoffs. A-Rod and Robinson, Cano and Curtis Granderson all had horrendous series. Derek Jeter went down with an injury that cost him the rest of that series, an ankle injury, and that's carrying over into this season now. So they had that rough end of their season last year. And while they made a few moves, which we'll get to in a second this offseason, Justin, things have gotten progressively worse with some of these injuries. Let me just read off to you the injuries that the Yankees have heading into the year. Two key players. They have Mark Teixeira has an ECU tendon strain. That's a bone in your wrist. And while Brian Cashman said he's out until at least May, I've read reports from doctors in the New York Daily News and New York Times both saying that it is extremely possible that Mark Teixeira could end up being out for this season because you cannot play with that tear on a day-to-day basis. So that's the first guy. Derek Jeter is going to begin the season on the DL, and as of today, March 28th, he was shut down for another week. That's before even resuming baseball activities, so you'd have to think he's going to be probably on 2 stints on the 15-day DL, so he'll miss between the first 2 weeks to a month of the season. A-Rod, who has certainly fallen out of favor there, but he's probably a lot more productive than Jason Nix over at third base. He will be out until the All-Star break, at least with that hip. Curtis Granderson is likely out till middle of May or June, and then Michael Pineda, who the Yankees have never even seen pitch a game in the regular season. There's not currently a timetable for him coming back from arm surgery. They hope to have him back at some point this season, so we will see. With all those injuries, Justin, the Yankees did have to go out and make some moves to address some of the holes that they now have open. So what did they do this offseason?
They're a really late bloomer this season when it comes to those free agent signings, and I was really disappointed on the amount of talent that the Yankees, who had the highest payroll in Major League Baseball, passed up on big guys second help. How this injury just plagued the team. But when they came into with the acquirements and signings and everything, they went out this offseason. They got Kevin Youkilis, who's going to be serving as a first baseman for Mark Teixeira. They went out in the outfield earlier on this week. Actually, they picked up Vernon Wells. The deal actually went official with Monty going to be going over to the Angels. He's going to be going over to the Yankees, playing left field. Wearing number 56, so that's something really new. They got Travis Hafner. He's coming over from the Cleveland Indians. Some minor league guys that they picked up very late. Ben Francisco, Lyle Overbay, Bobby Wilson. They got Josh Spence from the San Diego Padres. I mean, these moves are they're not really going to really wow you in the early stages of the season. This team is really just shot in the foot right now to start the season.
Yeah, they are, because some of these guys they bring in, they're nice names. Vernon Wells, Travis Hafner, they were nice names back in 2007. In 2013, though, I just look at some of these moves and I say that they do not have the pieces early on to stay afloat in this division. They're going to need to rush guys back like Jeter, like Curtis Granderson, like Mark Teixeira, and hope that they can produce at the level that they thought they could this year, because with the current lineup that the Yankees do have out, which we'll begin previewing in one moment, I'm just not sure they can compete. That's not me hating on the Yankees, Justin. That's me looking around at a division that features 4 other teams, 5 total teams, including the Yankees, that could potentially make the playoffs. You look at we were talking just prior to this video off camera, what the Tampa Bay Rays could do this season. We know what the Toronto Blue Jays are going to do this year. The Orioles made the playoffs last year, and I don't know what to think about the Red Sox, but they can't be any worse than they were last year, and they are the Red Sox. They have a lot of talent on that team. So, Justin, the Yankees might get some of these guys back middle of the season, but right now it's a matter of making sure that when they get them back, that they aren't already out of the race in this division.
Oh, absolutely. This is the time where, the backups, when these starters like, Grant Anderson, Teixeira, now these guys are all injured. It's not time for the backups like Eduardo Nunez, Jason Nix, Dan Johnson, who's also as an requirement over there, to really come in and really step up their game. They've got to, if this team really wants to be a contender, you need full production out of these backups who are going to be filling in such huge roles. And if they cannot do it, this team is just setting up for a down year, and this is Mariano Rivera's last year. I mean, we're not going to be going through this video talking about how bad we, bashed the Oakland Athletics last year and, talking about the Yankees this year. I mean, this Yankees team, yes, it does have a lot of great players. Ichiro Suzuki, how old he is, he's still producing. Brett Gardner, I have to give a lot of praise to Brett Gardner, a guy who was injured last year, played very well this spring training. He's going to have to step up in center. Cano is that heart and soul of this team right now in the early stages of the season.
Yeah, he certainly is, and we will see, beginning with Travis Hafner at the DH spot. And Justin, Travis Hafner last year played 66 games, hit .228 with 12 home runs, and as of recent, his problem has just been staying healthy. He's played 94 games in both 2009 and 2011, and in 2010, he only played 118. He was a guy back in 2006 that had a career year, hit 42 home runs. He's twice hit over 30 home runs. But the bottom line is that you're not even getting remotely the same guy. You're not going to get a guy that has had a very good time staying healthy in his recent seasons with the Cleveland Indians. And I just look at Travis Hafner and kind of think he can give you 15 home runs max, but the bottom line is that over the course of a whole year, I'm not necessarily feeling too comfortable with Travis Hafner.
Absolutely. That's the Yankees' problem now. I'm not trying to bash on the Yankees. The Yankees go out there, they put out a lot of money for these veteran, aging guys, and they think that with the money that they're offering, they're going to go out there and going to get you, 24 to 25 home runs a year. And Travis Hafner, during the early stages of his career, with the Cleveland Indians, he was good back in the day, but his age is really catching up to him. He's really been falling out. He's been serving as a DH role. With his fielding is not the greatest. This is a former first baseman, but Travis Hafner, his main role is going to be over at DH. You know what? He's going to hit you home runs time to time. And, last year, 12 home runs in 66 games, staying healthy is just that biggest key for him. He has to stay healthy. You've got to get full production out of Travis Hafner because, he's just one of, very few power bats on this team.
And the one thing I want to say for any Yankees fans that are watching this video and you think we're just hating on them, stick around for the end of this video because we're going to tie all this together. We're going to name some of the good parts about the Yankees, and we are going to give you their record prediction, where we see them in the season. And I can guarantee you we're going to be realistic about it, but we're not going to be stupid. We're not on here to bash the Yankees or anything like that. And this show is called The Real Sports Talk. We're going to keep it real in both senses, that we're not going to kill the team for things that don't make sense. But when the Yankees have all these injuries, we're going to point it out. We're not just going to turn a blind eye to it and act like it's not happening. They have a lot of injuries heading into this season. Now, Justin, at the catcher spot, this is another position that the Yankees can't feel too comfortable with entering the 2013 season because they lose Russell Martin, who was atrocious at the plate last season, and I had a lot of Yankees fans tell me how happy they were to get rid of him. But the bottom line is that Francisco Cervelli is not going to provide you a whole lot more. He's going to hit for a better average, probably hit you at 250, 260, but Russell Martin had more pop and was a better catcher behind the plate, I think, than Francisco Cervelli is. So I think Francisco Cervelli is a backup, and the Yankees are thrust into making him a starter because of Russell Martin signing in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he's being sworn in at the catcher's role. Francisco Cervelli, who has had, his name brought up in that steroid allegations on there in Miami, but, it's obvious that he probably didn't even take the steroids, and, MLB is still investigating. Something could change, but, overall, Francisco Cervelli, this is a guy who, in the farm system, really did not wow me a whole lot. There were a couple of, there was maybe a good season. I think it was in 2006 where he just went off and batted .309. But coming over to the Yankees, he's played a total of 184 games and serving as the backup, to Russell Martin. He really just could not really connect the dots. This is a guy who's not going to go out there and wow you with the home run power. He has great, fielding abilities, but when it comes to the plate, he's not that reliable. But what you get out of Francisco Cervelli is a great defensive catcher. He's still a young catcher, no doubt about that. He just really has got to step up. Now, when it comes to their backups, there's a two-way race still going on in spring training, which this really just needs to end, and that's between Bobby Wilson and Chris Stewart. Chris Stewart, I've seen firsthand in San Diego and also with San Francisco in 2011, who was a part of in San Francisco, who I saw firsthand. He has some power. He's not going to wow you on a daily basis with a lot of, fantastic, power swings. But you know what? His average is good. He has the major league experience. For Bobby Wilson, another guy who I've seen firsthand in Los Angeles, coming over to the New York Yankees, he could be a guy who could be a potential, starter for this team somewhere down the line. If Francisco Cervelli does not, be the Francisco Cervelli that we do want him to be, Bobby Wilson could really step in and take over the role, because this is a guy who has, a pretty decent average, and, he does have, solid numbers down the farm system, so why not give him that opportunity to become that starting catcher?
We'll see if they do. I think looking at Chris Stewart, he's a good backup, a respectable backup, hit 241 last year. I think the point is with both of these guys is that if the Yankees are legitimately going to make a run, they can get healthy at the right time, and they feel like at the deadline we can compete for a title this year, or we need to do something to get in the playoffs, they're going to have to add another catcher onto this team, because the bottom line is, since Jorge Posada has left this team or declined later on in his career, they really have not had a catcher that can hit at a high level the way, or anywhere near the way that Posada could. Kevin Youkilis is going to begin the season over at first base. When the Yankees originally signed him, they felt like they're getting great depth. They were going to get a guy that could back up Mark Teixeira. They got an insurance option at third base over for A-Rod. A few months later, A-Rod and Teixeira are both down and could both very well miss the entire season. If not, they'll miss big chunks of it. And Kevin Youkilis is going to end up being a starter. I know a lot of people criticized him for turning his back on Boston. Oh, that's what they said. I thought that was one of the stupidest things that I've ever heard, because the bottom line is that Boston turned their back on him last year. Bobby Valentine and him did not get along. This was a guy who was a leader in that clubhouse. He was a versatile player on a team that won 2 world titles, bigger part of the 07 title, but he was a rookie in 04 when they broke the curse. And they just turned their back on him, and the organization chose Bobby Valentine's side over Kevin Youkilis. They moved on from him, traded him for Brent Lillibridge, so that shows you how much they were trying to get back. And the bottom line is that I don't think he owes the Red Sox anything. He gets an opportunity with a very good team in the Yankees and a prestigious organization, and I would have taken it if I was him too.
Yeah, he's going to come over to the Yankees, Tim. He's going to be playing a huge, pivotal role in that infield. When it goes back to his times with the Boston Red Sox, yeah, he did win the World Series with them on multiple occasions. And Kevin Youkilis, he should be really pissed off at the Boston Red Sox organization. Yes, Bobby Valentine and Kevin Youkilis did not get along. And, Tim, you're also right again that, the Boston Red Sox turned their back on Kevin Youkilis because they traded him to the White Sox for absolutely nothing. Brent Lillibridge is not even an average type of player. This is a guy who's not even on the Boston Red Sox to this minute. He's out there, I think, playing back with the Cleveland Indians, serving as a minor league player. But, Kevin Youkilis, he's going to come into this Yankees team. He's going to show this team wrong. But Kevin Youkilis is still showing signs of sympathy towards the team, saying earlier on in the offseason, saying, I'm going to be a Boston Red Sox fan for life, or a Boston Red Sox for life. And you know what? I think those words, he's going to become he is a Boston Red Sox for life. But overall, Kevin Youkilis, a guy who's going to have to really step up in this role. He's going to be serving as Mark Teixeira's, replacement at first baseman for a reasonable amount of time. He really needs that power to go into this season. We hope that he can get that average, because this is the guy over the past couple of seasons, besides 2011, where he batted 307, 305, 312. We just hope that he can get that average back up, really continue to produce with that power. And you know what? If he comes over and does that with the New York Yankees, I think over at the first base position, and if Teixeira is out for the entire season, I think Kevin Youkilis will remain the starting first baseman for the rest of the 2013 season. And then third base is just really wide open.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned the part about him going to the Yankees. Justin hit it on the head, though. He needs to get the numbers back up because the last season, he really overall just had a terrible season. He needs to get the numbers back up. I think about 20 home runs is reasonable for Youkilis this year, about a 270 average, so that's what we look for out of him. Lyle Overbay is going to be his backup. Overbay last year split the season between Atlanta and Arizona, hitting a combined 259 with 2 home runs and 10 RBIs. Justin, you mentioned how they brought him in late. I just don't see a ton left in Lyle Overbay.
Lyle Overbay, he's just there for depth. His career is really on a down point because, like I've been saying in multiple videos now, he's going through a phase in his career where he's going to be bouncing around from team to team and just adding the depth. He's been bouncing around since 2011 with Arizona to Pittsburgh, back to Arizona to Atlanta, then coming to the New York Yankees. His years are done, and he's just there for depth and as a bench role for the team.
Now, Robinson Cano is the face of this team, and he is entering a contract year, and with all signs, he has earned a big contract, probably at least 140 or 50 million, I think, probably somewhere in that range, if not more. And, I mean, look at what Adam Wainwright got yesterday. If Adam Wainwright got that much, imagine how much Robinson Cano can get. And he's been a stud throughout the last 4 years. He has been, hands down, the best second baseman in the MLB. When Chase Utley started to go on a decline, Robinson Cano basically has performed at the same exact level that Chase Utley did when he was in his prime. Both of them have been tremendous second basemen, and Robinson Cano has had more time throughout the course of his career because he's stayed healthy, he's been in the MLB longer, and he continues to produce at a high level. He's a guy that's going to hit you over 310 in pretty much every season, give you close to 30, if not more than 30 home runs, and between 95 and 110 RBIs, I think is right where you expect him. He's in a contract year. The one thing I would say about him and Curtis Granderson, this would really sink the Yankees, is there was a report that came out a couple weeks ago. I forget what website it was on, but it said that they had heard from sources that Cano and Granderson had both failed the drug test, and A-Rod, but not that that's news. They had both failed the drug test, and they would be suspended at some point in the 2013 MLB season. If that happens, the Yankees can pretty much kiss their season goodbye. I think that's the only way I can put it, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, Yankee fans, you guys got to face the fact. Like I said, we're not hating on the team. We're giving you guys the facts. We're giving you guys what's going on in Major League Baseball and what's going on in the Yankees organization, to be exact. But for right now, to start the season, the Yankees are going to have to rely big time on Robinson Cano, a guy who only missed 1 game last season. I guess that was just due to rest or something like that. But, year in and year out, like Tim said, he's going to get you, up to, batting 300, 313 last year, and a big upgrade at that average from 2011 where he batted 302, batted up to 313 last season. His power is there, great fielding ability, a guy who is deserving of a long extension contract with this team. This guy is going to be the heart and soul of this team in the early phases of the season. Him and Kevin Youkilis are just going to have to get on the same page and be like, listen, we've got to go out there. If this team is really going to make a deep push for this playoff, it's going to come down to mainly me and you, Kevin, and this is going to be our power bats. We're going to go out there and show you guys a light show with our bats, and what we can really do is get those runs on the board. The Yankees have decent pitching. Got CC Sabathia, Kuroda, Andy Pettit. You just got to get that support from the pitching rotation. But overall, Robinson Cano is worth every dollar. Adam Wainwright money even more for Robinson Cano. This guy deserves it.
Yeah, he does. And you mentioned what Youkilis is going to have to do, but Youkilis isn't going to see the pitches if a guy like Robinson Cano does not produce. There is enormous pressure. I can't even state how much pressure is on Robinson Cano to have a big season coming off a terrible playoffs. He did win the World Baseball Classic MVP, but that really doesn't matter to anyone in America because, quite honestly, the World Baseball Classic was not watched by too many people in America. And Robinson Cano, the last memory a lot of people have is that, and then now was the playoffs, and then now we see with all these people out for the Yankees, I mean, who else do they have to turn to besides Kevin Youkilis in terms of power on this team? Vernon Wells, a guy who they just acquired at the end of spring training. Cano needs to step up, and he, to me, is an MVP candidate, and if he does not probably win MVP or play at a very close level to the point where he's a top 5 finisher in the MVP race, it's not likely that the Yankees are going to be a playoff team. So I think he can do that, but he needs to do that. So we'll see if he's able to produce at that type of level this year. So transitioning over to shortstop, Eduardo Nunez with Derek Jeter out for at least a couple weeks, maybe up to a month. And that's all assuming he does not have any setbacks. He's had quite a bit of time to rehab, considering he injured it back in October. But he's older now, in his late 30s, so who knows what happens. Eduardo Nunez is going to enter the season as the Yankees starting shortstop. Justin, last year he hit 292, but that was only in 89 at-bats, so that doesn't tell you a ton. 2 years ago, in 300 at-bats, hit 265, with 5 home runs, 30 RBIs, stole 22 bases. So I think he's a pretty serviceable backup for the time being. I don't think he is someone that over the course of a season the Yankees are going to have a ton of success with in terms of the fact that I don't think he's a guy that is going to be a starting shortstop for a playoff caliber team in most cases, especially one that already features so many other injuries. But for the time being, is he a good shortstop? Yes, he's a good replacement for Derek Jeter. And with Derek Jeter in a contract year this year, in his late 30s, if Eduardo Nunez shows that he can be an everyday guy, which I'm not sure he can be, but if he shows that, then maybe we are looking at the future starting shortstop of the New York Yankees.
Yeah, with Giro on the disabled list going into the season, Eduardo Nunez, he's going to have to step up a whole lot because this is a guy who's not really, positive when it comes to, his average. This is a guy who, give him good praise from last year. He batted .292, but that's the highest of his career at the major league level. In the farm system, I really picked up watching Eduardo Nunez in around 2008 when he was at the A level with the Tampa Yankees. And I also think this is a guy who they kind of rushed to the major league level, a guy who's really been down at the A level, really has not really gone to, the Rookie Pioneer League when he first came over from the Dominican Republic. And Eduardo Nunez, he has a great glove. Give him good praise for that. His hitting, it's not going to really wow you, but what you're getting is a really... Derek Jeter really worked with him really well with his time up at the major league level too. He really enhanced his glove, which was not really that positive down the farm system. When you look at his highlights, it's not really the most positive type of trait that he has. But Eduardo Nunez, this is a time where he really has got to step up. His bat has got to be there in the early stages. Remember, he's filling in for the captain, Derek Jeter, everybody. Derek Jeter. Eduardo Nunez, you've got to step up.
Yeah, he has to step up this year. That's the bottom line. Now, Jason Nix is going to be a key backup once A-Rod is able to come back. But for the time being, he will be the starting third baseman as well. He can play both short and second base. But Jason Nix will begin the season as a starter. Does not have a ton of MLB experience, although he's been at the MLB level since 2006. But last year, Nix with the Yankees... or since 2008, I should say. Last year, Nix with the Yankees in 74 games, hit .243 with 4 home runs. 2 years ago at .257 with 8 home runs. I don't see it as a long-term guy, and this is one of the reasons that I'm concerned about this team even being able to stay afloat. Is in a competitive, a division that is this competitive. Jason Nix as your starting third baseman. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, Jason Nix, a guy who's 30 years old, he's already bounced around from team to team, starting from 2008 with the Rockies, going to the White Sox, to the Indians, to the White Sox again, to the Blue Jays, and now he's landing up in New York. And you know what, this is a guy who I agree with you, Tim, he's not going to be, a full-term guy. That's why they brought in Dan Johnson, who's coming over from the Chicago White Sox. I think the White Sox acquired him about the trade deadline, if I'm not mistaken, from the Tampa Bay Rays. And, Dan Johnson, he can really flash out a couple of times. We saw it during, spring training, and he's been phenomenal. He's really stepped up. His defense has really improved. His average, he bats, 267. He batted 364 last year, but that's only in 14 games with the Chicago White Sox. Injuries just that course. But you know what? Looking at this guy in the farm system and in the early days that he has, his power is got to be, really going to be that type of role, because when I was watching this guy with AAA Durham, which is the Durham Bulls for the AAA affiliate of the Rays, this guy's going out there and hitting 25 to 30 home runs a year, and that's phenomenal. But when it comes to the major league level, he really needs that power to come, because he really has not displayed the full capabilities of his bat. It's always in that farm system where he can go out there and really produce. He's got to step up over at the third base role. He has got to bring that, that power from the farms, from the minor league farm system, and bring it to the major league level. Because Dan Johnson, it's just a matter of time until you get that, starting role here. Because I honestly do not think that Jason Nix is going to play all that well. I mean, it's not taking anything away from him, but this is a guy who is a backup, a role on any team.
I think actually the more realistic option, not to cut you off, but the more realistic option would be move Kevin Youkilis to third and have Dan Johnson play over at first, because he's just more of he's a better first baseman, or maybe even have Dan Johnson at some point this year, if it doesn't work out with Travis Hafner, have him DH. I mean, he's had some big hits with the Rays, but he's never put it together over the course of a full season, and I think that if he's ever going to, Justin, he has a chance to this season.
Yeah, he also could go another route. Is the Yankees have not, throughout the past few years, the Yankees have not been a team that has really called up, a lot of their hitting prospects. And there's this guy in their farm system named Ronnie Mollister, and this is a guy who has phenomenal power. In 2012 and 2011, he's only been in professional baseball for 2 years now. I think he actually came over from Cuba as a defector from Cuba, and it's just phenomenal what this guy can bring to the plate. 314 average last year in the minor league farm system for the New York Yankees. I think it was actually with the Tampa Yankees last year. But, this guy hit 15 home runs, 69 RBIs, and batted 314. If you're not going to be getting, a productive, outing from Jason Nix, Tim, you also mentioned, use, Youkilis over at third and put Dan Johnson over at first. That could be a possibility, but Yankees got to go another route and start looking and getting younger. They got to get young because, these older guys are on this team, and the injuries are catching up to them. Mm-hmm. And it's just all about Ronnie Mollister, who's a guy who's been in their farm system the past 2 years, and I honestly think in those 2 years, this guy has really proven to the Yankees that, I think I can get that shot done. I think I can be that guy to, provide great average, provide, the power in that lineup, and just add another power bat to this lineup, which really is, of course, a concern because there's not really a whole lot of power in this lineup besides Robinson Cano.
I think you make a good point about the Yankees with the age just seemingly catching up to this team. You see Teixeira. I mean, Granderson's not too old. That's just an injury. But A-Rod, the injuries have been catching up for a long time now. Jeter, this was just kind of a freak injury, but he is in his late 30s, so there's reason to be concerned there. CC Sabathia had some injuries last year, and he had a down year. Andy Pettit's up there in age. Mariano Rivera had the ACL. I mean, just the age and the injuries have piled up over the last couple seasons with this team, which isn't something we're used to seeing with the Yankees, but it has happened. And Vernon Wells out in left field is a guy that the Yankees hope that injuries do not pile up with this season, because they are anticipating that he can come over and hopefully play more like the Vernon Wells that hit 273 with 31 home runs in his last season with the Jays in 2010, and not the guy that the Angels got. That yes, he still had some power, hit 25 home runs in his first season there in 2011, but he also hit 218. I think that they need him to hit at least 260, 270, and hit 20 home runs this season, and if they can get that type of production out of him, then fine. If not, Brennan Bosch, I think, is probably the better option out in left field anyway for the time being, because as long as Granderson's out, Brett Gardner, who we'll get to in a minute, he will be the starting center fielder. Joe Girardi has said that even though there was some consideration of leaving Gardner in center permanently because he's a little bit younger, then in all likelihood they're going to keep him or move him to left field once Granderson comes back, and then shift Granderson back into center field. So Brennan Bosch is an option, at least for the time being, in left field as well. And 132 games last year with the Detroit Tigers. He hit 12 home runs, 54 RBIs. 2 years ago, 16 home runs, 54 RBIs. 3 years ago, 14 home runs, 67 RBIs. So you know pretty much what you're going to get out of Brennan Bosch, and it's not great production, but it's good production for the time being, and I think it's probably more consistent than what you're going to get out of Vernon Wells, Justin.
The Yankees also, another direction that they they can go. Brett Gardner, he's reaching up in the ages, but he's not that old. He's middle age right now for an average MLB player. But Vernon Wells, we'll start off with Vernon Wells first. But there's a lot of speculation. There's been a lot of rumors just going around that Vernon Wells is going to retire after the 2013 season. And you know what? He did not have the greatest past 2 years with the LA Angels. His pop was there all about one season. That was in 2011 where he hit those 25 home runs, and his average was just down 218, and then 2000 fell back at 230. You know what? This is another. I have to keep on bringing this up, but he has got to step up. This Yankees team has got to rely on so many backup guys right now to really step it up. Vernon Wells, he's going to be coming back over to the American League East. He's going to be facing off against his Toronto Blue Jays, every other week or so in this division. So he's going to have a homecoming over there in Toronto, and I cannot wait for the Yankees to play the Blue Jays because I want to know how that atmosphere is going to be like when Vernon Wells goes to Toronto. Is he going to get standing ovation? Is he going to get a standing boo? We'll just have to wait and see. I think that's an interesting guys want to look out for. Another option that they can go is they did get Ben Francisco and Brendan Bosch. Brendan Bosch, the younger guy. There's also a guy down there in farm system where a lot of people are not getting a lot of look guy over, and that is Melky Mesa, a guy who I really paid attention to over the past couple of years. With the Trenton Yankees and the Tampa Yankees. This is a really up and coming guy. In 2012, he's really saw a complete turnaround in his game. He bat a minor league high of 14 home runs last season. His average was really high, about a 277. And he really turned around his game a whole lot. So you can go Melky Mesa as a backup for the time being. But you know what? I really like what the Yankees have right now with Vernon Wells over in left. They're putting Gardner over there in center, and then you have Ichiro over in right. But Brendan Bosch, I think he's going to be a guy who you guys also going to look out for because he got let go from the Tigers. I guess he was a more than likely man out with with the new accusations that they have in the outfield, which we'll get to later on with the Tigers preview. But Brendan Bosch, he still has a lot to improve. He's going to be a work in progress. I can see a long-term situation with him in New York, actually.
Yeah, I actually can too. Probably more as a fourth outfielder type, but maybe he could be the long-term left fielder. Now, Brett Gardner is someone that the Yankees have expectations on because he is someone in center field that has been with this team for quite a long time. He's a veteran player on this team, and I like him a lot, don't get me wrong, but he isn't necessarily in this lineup because he provides the greatest numbers at the plate. He's in this lineup because he can steal bases and because he does things the right way. He's a hard-nosed, in-your-face type of player that will run out every play. He'll slide at first base. I've seen him do it in numerous games in the playoffs, in the regular season. He's a hard-nosed type of guy, and you like that. But at the same time, he's not going to be someone that you look to carry this team early on. And I like him out in center field early on to begin the season, but in terms of carrying this team, I think some people think he's the type of person that's going to step up, and I'm just telling you now that that's not going to be something that happens. And do not expect the same, or do not expect that with Ichiro in right field either. Ichiro is someone who is a first ballot Hall of Famer. If he had been in the MLB, his entire baseball career would have been the all-time hits leader. Unfortunately, he was not, but he is someone over the past 2 or 3 seasons that has really slowed down in terms of his production. However, when he came over to the Yankees in 67 games last year, he hit .322, 5 home runs, 27 RBIs, stole 14 bags. I think the thing to say about him is he can still steal close to 30 bases. He's going to be someone that, playing a full year with the short right field in New York, can hit probably about 12 home runs. And I think that the average comes up to about 270 or 280. Just don't expect the Ichiro that was hitting .352 in 2009.
Oh, absolutely. I'll start over with Brett Gardner first. Tim, you're absolutely right with Brett Gardner. Brett Gardner last year, he was playing with injuries all of the entire season, but he only played in 16 games. So, he was a guy that came in September and just, tried to continue, baseball activities, and that's pretty much what he did. He stole, 2 bases last year. You know what? It was just trying to get back into major league activities, but now he's going to be the starting center fielder, picking up for Curtis Granderson, who's going to be out for a tremendous amount of time. But, overall, Brett Gardner is a guy who will get on base. He is a stealing machine. When he was healthy in 159 games with the Yankees in 2011, and 150 games with the Yankees in 2010. This guy stole about 49 bases. 47 in 2010 and 49 in 2011. This guy is a base stealing machine, and he's also great to have on your roster as that speedster in the outfield as well. He plays great defensive ball. But when you overlook it and looking over at Ichiro Suzuki out there in right field, a guy who, the past couple of seasons, it's not the Ichiro Suzuki we've been seeing, because Ichiro Suzuki, every single year since 2001, has got somehow 200 hits over a course of his career. In 2011, 2012, he's all about 184 hits in 2011, and in 2012, he got, I'm having a hard time looking up his stats here as it's loading, 105 hits in 2012. His average, it's declining a little bit, about a 261 last year with the Yankees. We just hope that his average can go up about it. I'm hoping that he can get up to the 280. I think at worst maybe 275. I think he is aging. Another addition to the team was another aging player addition to this team for the Seattle Mariners. Ichiro, he still has that cannon of the arm, and that's pretty much what he's going to be using for out there in right field.
Yeah, and I think you talked about some of the other options like Ben Francisco. He'll bring a good glove. Occasionally will hit you a home run, but I think there's a reason he's bounced around from the Blue Jays to the Indians in spring training, and then over to the Yankees. He's just really a fringe MLB player, fringe fifth outfielder at best. Now, looking over to this rotation, for quite a long time at the top of this rotation, you know what you're getting out of CC Sabathia. Last year he had some injuries. He was only able to pitch 28 games, won 15-6 with a 3.38 ERA. The ERA you want to see get down closer to about the 3 area, which is where he was in 2011. And I want to see him come back and pitch the entire season again this year. And then looking at the number 2 spot, you have Hiroki Kuroda, who spent his first season in New York last year, had a tremendous year, going 16-11 with a 3.32 ERA. Hiroki Kuroda is the type of player that he's never done anything great. He's never been like a Cy Young type of pitcher, but in his entire MLB career, really, especially in the last 3 years, he's really figured it out. He's a solid number 2 or number 3 guy. And Andy Pettitte at number 3, while he's old, he continues to produce well for this team. Last year, made 12 starts, 5-4 with a 2.87 ERA. I think the key thing for him is, can he pitch over the course of a full season? Because he hasn't had to do that since 2010. 2011 he was retired. 2012 he came back, and it took him a while to get back into things because he signed into spring training, or when they were already into spring training. So if he can get back to the point where he can throw 200 innings this year, or somewhere in the mid-100s, then the Yankees have a solid number 3 guy. I'm not sure if he can do that at this point in his career. Ivan Nova is going to be the number 4 starter. Nova went 12-8 with a 5.02 ERA last year. Extreme disappointment. They need to get the Nova of 2 years ago, not in terms of the wins, but an ERA around 3.60, 3.70. That's the Ivan Nova that you need to get if you're the Yankees this year. And then David Phelps rounds out the rotation. Last year, Phelps split time between the bullpen and the starting rotation with a 4-4 record and a 3.34 ERA. So, Justin, looking at this rotation, what comes to mind for you?
I think it's going to have to be CC Sabathia carrying that workload. I mean, the Yankees were just lucky to hold on to Hiroki Kuroda for another season. And, Hiroki Kuroda, I can take, CC Sabathia and Hiroki Kuroda as a 1-2 hole. I think a lot of these guys these 2 guys are phenomenal pitchers. CC Sabathia had a huge, down year last year. Hope that he can get back on track in 2013, because this guy has, Cy Young caliber arm. As for Hiroki Kuroda, he came over from the Dodgers, coming over to the New York Yankees in 2012, actually last year, in his first full season. He really, it was all kind of up and down with my opinion about him. 16-11 with the 3.32. He did get you those 200 innings. That's why I love the New York Yankees. 1-2 punch with Hiroki Kuroda and CC Sabathia. These are 2 guys that can go late into games and can pitch phenomenally. when it comes to their time on the mound. Now, as for Andy Pettitte, a guy who's just been, contemplating retirement, he comes back to the New York Yankees, and you know what? We just haven't really seen, the Andy Pettitte of the olden days. He's old, he's way old by age, past his prime, and past his playing career. I think this guy who can really just go to a college and be a guy who can actually be, a pitching coach in college, because, he has played college baseball before coming over to the major leagues. We're talking, years ago, and I think that's the road that Andy Pettitte should go. I think this is going to be his last season in Major League Baseball until he really considers retirement. So, Andy Pettitte, is he a decent number 3? Yes, absolutely. Number 4 is where I actually think where Ivan Nova should be in the number 3, and Pettitte over at number 4. Ivan Nova is going to be their number 4 guy, and I actually think this is a guy where the Yankees could actually trade and actually pick up another player. I think once it comes to trade deadline, I think that he could be the guy that the Yankees could possibly be like, okay, we have, I think his name is David Phelps, who, actually is contending for a pitching rotation, a spot in the rotation at number 5 against Phil Hughes. This team does have, a lot of great, minor league guys who can actually come in and really take over, a number 4 and number 5 spot, as Hiroki Kuroda, as CC Sabathia takes over it. But, Ivan Nova does have a lot of trade value to him, and he could be, a trade possibility for the New York Yankees. But this is a guy who in 2012 really needs to bring his ERA down heading into 2013, because in 2012 had an ERA at 5.02, really just, oh my God, that was just bad. But you know what? This is a guy who can get back on track. He's going to be carrying a really heavy workload in the middle of the rotation. And you know what? I still think that the Yankees can really get something great out of him. Going down to number 5, you got, a big two-man punch right now. You got Phil Hughes, who's just been absolutely just a big disappointment the past couple of seasons with the New York Yankees, who just really has been falling off. I mean, I don't know where, this rapid just fall off is coming from, because this is a guy who 2010, 18-8 with the 419. That's respectable for me. This is a guy who went into 2010 when pitching 176 innings, but in 2011, 5-5 in 17 games, that had an ERA at 5.79, and then he comes back in 2012, a 4.19 ERA and 16-3 record. I mean, it's just awful right now. And now the Yankees are going to be forced to bring in one of their bullpen guys, who's actually a very phenomenal, could be a starting pitcher on any team at number 5, obviously. And that's David Phelps, the pride of Notre Dame University, and he has some good stuff, 4-4 last year. This was actually his first time up at the major league level. This guy is, number 5 caliber ready for this Yankees pitching rotation. But overall, it's just that heavy workload for Sabathia and Kuroda for the entire season.
Justin, I think having talked about all the injuries the Yankees have, there still are some bright sides. I still think Derek Jeter and Curtis Granderson are going to come back and have very good years. But Mark Teixeira, the injuries are concerning, and I don't think that Yankees fans understand that enough. And I don't think MLB fans understand that enough, because the Yankees have kind of tried to downplay this injury. And in reality, I think it's more serious than people think. That's from what I've read. A-Rod, who knows how long he's going to be out and what impacts he'll have when he comes back. And I just think that in this tough division, the Yankees are a third-place team this year. About 86, 87 wins. They will compete for that second wild card spot. But my guess is that for the first time since 2008, the Yankees will not be in this year's MLB playoffs.
I have to agree, man. I mean, there's just so many injuries in the early parts of the season. It's going to be rough for them to catch up to the teams like the Toronto Blue Jays, like the Tampa Bay Rays, so I really think they're going to be really underestimated this year. Their infield, has some questions, but I think that with the pitching behind them, that's really what's going to set them up over in second place. The New York Yankees, what really just hurts me just to talk about is that they replaced older guys with much older guys. And you know what? You really got to start looking down your farm system. You start got to look at bringing in some much younger talent to this team, because you just cannot replace older guys with older guys. It's just, that's not going to really do you a lot of good, because you're only going to have them for a small period of time. And in order to go out there and get wins, you got to bring in the guys who are going to really produce. And in the early parts of the season, this is why I'm coming up and telling you guys that this Yankees team is going to have to rely big time on Robinson Cano. They're going to have to rely huge on Kevin Youkilis, the two main guys on this roster, because other than that, you don't know what you're getting out of Jason Hicks, you don't know what you're getting out of Travis Hafford, you don't know what you're getting out of Francisco Cervelli. Vernon Wells Brett Gardner, Ichiro Suzuki could be a guy you could throw in with Cano and Youkilis as well, because I think Ichiro Suzuki, who still has that cannon of an arm, still can outplay a lot of players on this roster in the outfield. And you know what? It's just really a course of concern for 2013, the New York Yankees.
It is. We will see, because I know a lot of Yankees fans are not going to be happy with us after this video, because the expectation in New York is World Series or bust, and it should be when you're a team that has such a rich history like them. We'll see. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Tim Kelly for Justin Godsey. We'll see you guys next time.